Captain Lehana pressed her hand against the cold metal wall of her ship and felt the gentle vibration that meant they were moving through space. But not the kind of space that other people knew about. This was the empty space between stars, the dark places where nothing was supposed to live. She walked slowly to the big window at the front of her ship. Outside, there were no planets or moons or bright stars, just darkness that went on forever. But Lehana was not afraid of the dark. Her people had learned to love it. 300 years ago, humans had lived on many worlds across the galaxy. They had talked to alien races and traded with them. They had been part of something called the Galactic Council, where all the different species made decisions together. But then something bad happened and humans just disappeared. One day they were there, and the next day they were gone. The aliens thought humans had all died. They stopped looking for them. They forgot about them. They even forgot their names. When alien children learned about history, humans were just a short paragraph in their books. Most aliens thought humans had destroyed themselves with wars or diseases. But Lehana knew the truth. Humans had not died. They had just learned to hide very, very well. Her ship was called the Meridian's Edge, and it was nothing like the ships humans used to build. The old human ships needed fuel and made noise and could be seen from far away. This ship drank energy from the darkness itself. It could become invisible. It could fold space so that far away places became close. It could do things that would make the aliens' best scientists cry. Lehana was 45 years old, but she had never lived on a planet. She had been born in the void, in the empty spaces where her people now made their homes. Her parents had been born there too. And their parents. For 300 years, humans had been living in places where nothing else could survive. She touched a button on the wall, and the room filled with soft blue light. Pictures appeared in the air around her, showing hundreds of other ships just like hers. They were all hidden in the darkness, all waiting. Some carried families, some carried soldiers, some carried giant machines that could build new ships or create food from nothing but space dust. Lieutenant Park Ji-ho walked up to her. He was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes and steady hands. Like all void-born humans, he was taller and thinner than humans used to be. Living in space had changed them. "Captain," he said quietly, "we got a message from the Shadow Command. All the fleets are ready. They are asking if we should begin." Lehana nodded slowly. For 300 years, her people had been preparing for this moment. They had built ships that could appear and disappear like ghosts. They had learned to make weapons from the basic forces that held the universe together. They had become something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. "What about the civilians?" she asked. "The families and children?" "They are safe in the deep void cities," Park Ji-ho answered, "far from any danger. The nursery ships have enough supplies for 100 years. Lehana smiled a little. The void cities were humanity's greatest achievement. Entire communities lived inside giant structures that drifted in the emptiness between galaxies. They had gardens that grew food from starlight. They had schools where children learned to navigate by reading the patterns of dark matter. They had everything they needed to survive forever in the cold and dark, but they had not built these cities just to hide. They had built them to grow strong. She walked to another window and looked out at a small point of light in the distance. It was a star system where aliens lived. Rich, comfortable aliens who had forgotten that humans ever existed. Aliens who had let human colonies die when they could have saved them. Aliens who had decided that humans were not important enough to help. "Send the message to all fleets," she said. "Tell them it is time." Park Ji-ho pressed some buttons on his control panel. All across the dark void, hundreds of human ships received the same message. Ships that had been waiting for centuries in the cold and silence. Ships full of people who remembered what it felt like to be forgotten. Lehana thought about her grandmother, who had been alive during the Great Silence. She had told stories about the old days when humans begged the aliens for help and got nothing, when human children died from diseases that alien medicine could have cured easily, when human colonies were attacked and no one came to save them. "Grandmother," she whispered to the darkness, "we are not forgotten anymore. The ship began to move, joining the great fleet that was finally coming out of hiding. After 300 years of silence, humanity was ready to speak again. And this time, the galaxy would listen. Admiral Kim Min-ho stood in the control room of his ship, the Persistence. He was looking at a screen that showed 12 huge alien warships coming toward him. Each one was 10 times bigger than his ship. Each one had enough weapons to destroy a small moon. The aliens were called the Hegemony, and they were not nice. For 200 years, they had been taking over planets and making the people there into slaves. They thought they were the strongest force in the galaxy. They had never lost a fight. Commander Choi Suman sat at her station nearby. Her fingers moved quickly over the buttons and lights. She was reading what the alien ships were saying to them. "Admiral," she said, "they want us to surrender. They say we have 1 minute to give up or they will destroy us." Kim Min-ho was 50 years old. His hair was starting to turn gray, but his eyes were sharp and calm. He had been born on a void ship just like most humans now. He had never seen a planet with his own eyes, but he had heard stories about them from his grandfather. "How many people are on those ships?" he asked. "About 50,000, Choi Suman answered. "Mostly soldiers, but some of them have families too." Kim Min-ho felt sad about that. He did not like killing even when it was necessary. But these aliens had chosen to be part of an empire that hurt innocent people. They had chosen to attack his ship without even asking who he was or what he wanted. "Do they know we are human?" he asked. "No, Admiral. They think we are just some small group of pirates or rebels. They have no idea." Kim Min-ho almost smiled. The aliens had forgotten humans so completely that they could not even recognize a human ship when they saw one. To them, humans were just an old story, something that used to exist a long time ago. "Show me the tactical display," he said. The air in front of him filled with a three-dimensional picture of the space around them. The 12 alien ships were arranged in a perfect attack formation. They had surrounded his single small ship. Their weapons were charging up, getting ready to fire. But Kim Min-ho could see things that the aliens could not see. His ship's sensors could detect dark matter flows and quantum fluctuations. They could measure the tiny vibrations in space-time itself. The aliens were still using technology that was hundreds of years old. "Suman," he said quietly, "activate the void protocols." Commander Choi Suman pressed a series of buttons. Deep inside the ship, machines that worked with the basic forces of the universe came to life. The ship began to change in ways that were impossible to explain with old science. To the aliens watching on their screens, something very strange started to happen. The single human ship seemed to split apart. One ship became 2, then 4, then 8, then 12 ships that looked exactly the same. But these were not copies or tricks with mirrors. Each ship was completely real. The Persistence had learned to exist in many different possibilities at the same time. It was there and not there, real and unreal, all at once. The alien commander was a creature called General Vexthor. He had won 100 battles and conquered 20 worlds. He had never seen anything like this before. "What is happening?" he screamed at his science officer. "How can one ship become 12 ships?" The science officer was shaking. His 6 arms were moving frantically over his controls, but nothing made sense. "I do not know, General. Our sensors say all 12 ships are real, but that is impossible." General Vexthor felt afraid for the first time in many years. "Fire at all of them," he ordered. "Destroy them all." The 12 alien ships fired their biggest weapons. Beams of energy that could cut through planets shot out toward the human ships, but the beams passed right through some of them, as if they were made of air. Then the human ships fired back. But they did not fire energy beams or missiles. They fired something much worse. They fired weapons that attacked the basic rules that held matter together. Where the human weapons hit, the alien ship simply forgot how to exist. The first alien ship just vanished, like it had never been there at all. The second ship turned into a cloud of tiny particles. The third ship folded in on itself until it became a dot, no bigger than a grain of sand. General Vexthor watched 11 of his ships disappear in less than 1 minute. His own ship was the only one left, and only because the humans had decided to let it live. "This is impossible," he whispered. Then his communication system came to life. The face of Admiral Kim Min-ho appeared on his screen. The alien general had never seen a human before, but somehow he knew what he was looking at. "You are human," General Vexthor said, his voice full of shock. "Yes," Kim Min-ho replied. "We are the people you forgot. We are the people you thought were dead. We have been watching you, General. We know about all the worlds you have destroyed, all the people you have hurt. But humans are extinct," the alien general said. "You disappeared 300 years ago." "We did not disappear," Kim Min-ho said calmly. "We just learned to live where you cannot see us. We learned to become something you cannot understand, and now we have decided it is time to come back." The single human ship vanished into the darkness, leaving General Vexthor alone with his fear and his impossible story that no one would believe. Dr. Yoon Hye-jin walked slowly through the empty hallways of the medical station. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. 3 days ago, this place had been full of doctors and nurses trying to save lives. Now most of them were dead, and the rest were dying. The Crimson Plague had come to the human colonies like a fire in dry grass. It spread from person to person through the air. First you got a fever, then red spots appeared on your skin. Then you died. There was no cure and no way to stop it. Hye-jin was tired. She had not slept for 4 days. Her white coat was dirty and her hands shook from too much coffee and too little food. But she kept working because she was the only one left who knew how to operate the communication system. She sat down at the big control panel and pressed the buttons that would connect her to the Galactic Council. The council was made up of representatives from all the different alien species in the galaxy. They made the important decisions about trade and war and peace. The screen came to life, showing the inside of the council chambers. It was a huge room with seats for hundreds of different kinds of aliens. Some looked like giant insects. Some looked like walking plants. Some were just balls of energy floating in glass containers. At the center of the room sat the Chancellor, a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. His name was Zethkeller, and he was from a species called the Zephyrians. They were one of the most powerful races in the galaxy. "Chancellor," Hye-jin said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am Dr. Yoon Hye-jin from the Human Medical Research Station on Kepler 442b. I am requesting emergency aid for our colonies." The Chancellor looked at her with his large, dark eyes. Around the room, other aliens turned to stare at the screen. Some of them whispered to each other. Some of them looked bored. "Dr. Yoon," the Chancellor said in his deep voice, "we have already discussed the human situation. The Council has decided that we cannot spare resources for every small problem." Hye-jin felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Chancellor, this is not a small problem. The plague has already killed 3 million humans. Our colonies on New Terra, Haven's Rest and Sunrise are completely dead. Everyone there is gone." An alien that looked like a giant crab spoke up. "How do we know this plague will not spread to our worlds? Perhaps it is better to let it run its course among the humans." "The plague only affects human biology," Hye-jin explained. "Your people are completely safe, but we need medicine and medical equipment. We need doctors who understand advanced genetics. Please, we are begging you." The Chancellor was quiet for a long moment. Around him, other aliens talked among themselves in their strange languages. Finally, he raised one of his 4 hands for silence. "The Council has limited resources," he said. "We must prioritize aid to civilizations that contribute significantly to galactic stability and prosperity. Humans, while interesting, are not considered essential to the galactic community." Hye-jin stared at the screen. She could not believe what she was hearing. "Not essential? We have been part of the Galactic Council for over a century. We have shared our technology. We have fought alongside you in wars. You have been junior members." Another alien interrupted. This one looked like a walking tree with eyes. "Humans are a young species. You have not yet proven your worth to the galaxy." The Chancellor nodded. "The Council's decision is final. We will provide humanitarian aid if and when resources become available. Until then, we suggest you focus on managing the situation with your existing capabilities." The screen went dark. Heijin sat staring at the blank display for a long time. Around her, the medical station was quiet except for the sound of machines keeping the last few patients alive. She thought about all the human colonies scattered across the galaxy, millions of people who were counting on help that would never come, children who would die because aliens thought human lives were not important enough to save. But as she sat there in the darkness, an idea began to form in her mind. It was a terrible idea, but also a brilliant one. If the galaxy thought humans were not worth saving, then maybe it was time for humans to stop asking for permission to exist. Maybe it was time to disappear completely and become something new. She turned on her personal computer and began to write, not a medical report or a plea for help, but something much more important. She called it the Void Protocol. The plan was simple but would take centuries to complete. Humans would fake their own extinction. They would abandon their visible colonies and move to the empty spaces between stars. They would develop new technology in secret, technology that used the dark, matter and quantum forces that other species did not understand. They would become ghosts, living in places where no one else could survive. They would grow strong in the darkness while the galaxy forgot they ever existed. Heijin worked for 3 days straight, writing down every detail of the plan. She sent copies to secret human research stations throughout the galaxy. Scientists and engineers read her words and understood what needed to be done. The Crimson Plague eventually burned itself out, but by then it was too late. The galaxy had shown its true face. Humans knew they were alone, and they began to plan accordingly. Dr. Yoon Heijin died 2 years later, but her great-great-grandson would one day command the first Void Fleet. The seeds she planted in the darkness would grow into something the galaxy never expected. The aliens thought they had taught humans a lesson about their place in the universe. They had no idea what kind of students humans could be. Fleet Commander Song Hyok stood at the center of his command ship, watching 300 enemy vessels spread across the star system like hungry wolves. The hegemony had brought their entire war fleet, and they had convinced several Galactic Council species to help them. They wanted to find every human in the galaxy and destroy them completely. Song Hyok was 60 years old, born in the deep void between galaxies. His skin was pale from a lifetime without sunlight, and his eyes were adapted to see in almost total darkness. Like all void-born humans, he was tall and thin, with long fingers that moved gracefully over his controls. Captain Bae Minseo stood beside him. She was younger, maybe 40, with the same pale skin and dark-adapted eyes. She had been his second in command for 15 years, and they worked together like two parts of the same machine. "Commander," she said quietly, "their sensors are scanning everything. They are looking for our bases, our colonies, our hidden ships." Song Hyok smiled. The aliens were using the same kind of sensors they had always used. They looked for metal, and energy and heat. They looked for the things that normal ships and normal civilizations produced. But humans had stopped being normal a long time ago. "What do they see when they look at us?" he asked. "Nothing," Bae Minseo replied. "Empty space, dark matter, cosmic background radiation. We do not exist in the dimensions they can perceive." The enemy fleet had divided into 3 groups. One group was searching the asteroid belt for hidden bases. Another group was scanning the outer planets for underground colonies. The third group was using special equipment to look for energy signatures that might reveal human technology. General Vex Thor, the alien who had survived the encounter with Admiral Kim Minho, was leading the search. He had told the other species about the impossible human ship that had destroyed 11 of his vessels. Most of them thought he was lying or crazy, but they had agreed to help anyway. Song Hyuk could see Vex Thor's flagship on his displays. It was a massive ship, bigger than a city, covered with weapons and sensors. The general was probably in his command center right now, staring at his screens and wondering where the humans were hiding. "He thinks we are like insects hiding under rocks," Song Hyuk said. "He thinks if he looks hard enough he will find our holes and smoke us out." But humans were not hiding under rocks. They were existing in folded space, in dimensions that normal science said were impossible. Their cities drifted through the quantum foam that existed between atoms. Their ships moved through probability streams that could not be detected by conventional sensors. All void fleets, Song Hyuk spoke into his communication device. This is Shadow Command. Begin manifestation protocol. Across the star system, reality began to change. The first sign was a ripple in space-time itself. The aliens' most sensitive instruments detected tiny fluctuations in gravity and electromagnetic fields. Their scientists looked at the readings and frowned because the numbers made no sense. Then the void fleets began to appear. They did not come from behind asteroids or from the edges of the system. They came from nowhere, materializing out of empty space like ghosts becoming solid. First one ship, then 10, then 100. Then so many that the alien computers could not count them all. Captain Bae Minseo watched the enemy fleet's reaction on her screens. Their formation is breaking apart, she reported. They are confused and scared. Song Hyuk nodded. Fear was a powerful weapon, and the aliens had every reason to be afraid. The human ships that were appearing around them looked nothing like the vessels they remembered from 300 years ago. The void carriers were massive structures that seemed to be made of crystallized darkness. They released swarms of fighter craft that phased in and out of normal space, impossible to target or track. The reality anchors were smaller, but more terrifying, equipped with weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in small areas of space. But the most frightening ships were the judgment vessels. They were sleek and beautiful, like art made from starlight and shadow. Each one carried a complete record of every human colony that had been abandoned, every plea for help that had been ignored, every life that had been lost because the galaxy did not care. General Vexthor's voice came over the communication channels, broadcast to all his ships. Fire at will! Destroy them all! The alien fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams that could melt planets, missiles that could crack moons, gravity weapons that could crush matter into nothing. For a moment, space was filled with more destructive power than some stars produced. But most of the weapons passed through the human ships like they were made of air. The void fleets existed partially outside normal space-time. They could choose when to be solid and when to be like ghosts. When the human ships fired back, it was not with conventional weapons. They used devices that attacked the basic forces holding matter together. Where their weapons struck, enemy ships simply forgot how to exist as organized matter. Admiral Lee Jisoo commanded the Judgment Fleet from her flagship, the Final Reckoning. She was Song Hyuk's superior and the descendant of the scientists who had first developed void technology. As she watched enemy ships dissolve into their component atoms, she felt no joy, only the satisfaction of a job being completed. Send the message, she ordered. To every surviving alien ship, the same transmission was sent. It contained the complete history of human suffering in the galaxy, every ignored request for aid, every colony left to die, every human child who had perished while aliens decided their lives were not worth saving. The message ended with simple words. We remember. We have always remembered. Now you will remember too. Fleet Admiral Kang Daehyun walked slowly into the great meeting hall of Harmony's Rest. The space station was neutral ground, a place where different species had met for peace talks for over 1,000 years. But today was different. Today the Forgotten had returned to speak. The hall was enormous, with a ceiling that showed the stars outside. Around the curved wall sat representatives from every major species in the galaxy. The Zephyrians with their blue skin and 4 arms. The crystalline entities that looked like living jewels. The hive minds that spoke with one voice from many bodies. All of them were staring at the single human who walked to the center of the room. Kang Daehyun was 70 years old, but he moved with the quiet strength of someone who had lived his entire life in the void. His hair was white, and his pale skin seemed to glow softly in the artificial light. He wore a simple black uniform with no decorations, but everyone in the room knew he commanded forces that could reshape the galaxy. Behind him, visible through the great windows, floated the human void fleet. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions, at once. cities that drifted between stars like living things, weapons that could unmake reality itself. The aliens had never seen anything like them, and many were still trying to understand how such things were possible. Chancellor Zeth Kalar, the same Zephyrian who had refused to help humans during the plague centuries ago, sat in the center chair. His descendant now held the same position, but his hands were shaking as he looked at the human before him. "Admiral Kang," the Chancellor said, his voice barely steady, "you have requested this meeting. The Galactic Council is listening." Kang De-hyun looked around the room slowly, making eye contact with representatives from dozens of species. Some of them looked afraid. Some looked angry. A few looked curious. None of them looked like they felt safe. 300 years ago, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space, my ancestors came to this same council asking for help. Human colonies were dying from a plague that your medicine could have cured easily. Human children were starving on worlds that your ships could have reached in days. Human families were crying out for aid that never came. The room was completely silent. Even the hive minds, who usually whispered constantly among themselves, were quiet. "You told us we were not essential," Kang De-hyun continued. "You said your resources were limited. You decided that human lives were not worth saving because we had not yet proven our value to the galaxy." An insect-like alien from the Swarm Collective started to speak, but Kang De-hyun held up one hand and the creature fell silent. "We learned from that lesson," the Admiral said. "We learned that in this galaxy, strength is the only thing that matters. We learned that if you want to survive, you must become something that cannot be ignored or dismissed or forgotten." He gestured toward the windows where the impossible human fleet waited in the darkness. "So we disappeared. We went to the places where you could not follow, could not see, could not even imagine. We fed on dark matter and learned to exist in folded space. We became something new, something that your science says should be impossible." The Chancellor leaned forward in his chair. "What do you want from us, Admiral? Revenge? Conquest? The destruction of our civilizations?" Kang De-hyun shook his head slowly. "We want what we asked for 300 years ago. We want to be treated as equals. We want every species in this galaxy to be valued and protected, not just the ones you consider important." A crystalline being that sparkled like a living diamond spoke up. "You have the power to force us to do anything you want. Why are you asking instead of commanding?" "Because," Kang De-hyun replied, "we remember what it felt like to be powerless. We remember what it felt like to beg for help and be ignored. We will not become the thing that hurt us." He reached into his uniform and pulled out a small device. When he activated it, holographic images appeared in the air around the room. They showed human void cities where aliens and humans worked side by side. They showed medical stations where human doctors were already treating patients from dozens of species. They showed schools where children of different races learned together. "This is what we offer," he said. "A new covenant based on mutual respect and shared responsibility. Every species contributes according to their abilities. Every species receives help according to their needs. No one is left to die alone." The room buzzed with whispered conversations in a dozen different languages. The representatives were talking among themselves, trying to decide what to do. Finally, the Chancellor stood up. "And if we refuse?" Kang De-hyun's expression did not change, but somehow his presence seemed to fill the entire room. "Then you will learn what 300 years of anger and preparation can create. You will discover what happens when the powerless decide they have had enough of being ignored." The vote was taken quickly. Every species voted to accept the new covenant, not because they wanted to, but because they understood that the alternative was unthinkable. Years passed. Captain Oh Yansu, now an old woman, stood on the observation deck of New Harmony Station. Through the transparent walls, she could see human void cities docked peacefully alongside traditional alien habitats. Children from a dozen species played together in the corridors, laughing and learning from each other. The galaxy had not been conquered. It had been transformed. The forgotten had become the foundation of something better, something that valued all life equally. In the deep void, The quantum networks hummed with a simple message broadcast on all frequencies. No one will be forgotten again. No one will be left to die alone. We remember, and we will make sure you remember too. The darkness that had once hidden humanity now carried them as guardians to every corner of the universe.